So you've made the corset pattern from your own measurements, and you've made the basic undervest corset from that pattern, right? Amazing. So let's look at some awesome variants and ways you can play with this pattern. One thing people often want is a modesty panel, which is one of the stupidest uses of the word modesty I can think of, but whatever. It's a bit of fabric, usually the same fabric as the corset, that spans the lacing gap and stops your chemise from showing through. Or your back, if you're wearing it on bare skin, but also, what are you doing wearing it on bare skin? Then it'll need washing, and that's not a thing. But if you want not to see through the lacing gap, you'll need some fabric there, and if you want that fabric not to wander off, it'll need to be attached in some way. The fabric I've used is one layer of my outer fabric and one layer of coutil, just a rectangle big enough to fill the gap, plus a little on the sides, sewn around 3 sides, clipped, inverted, and top stitched. And top stitched down the raw edge and trimmed pretty close to the stitching line. That edge I have sewn to the right side of the corset's coutil before it got attached to anything else, just outside the intended location of the lacing eyelets so as not to interfere with that system when I put it in. And I've sewn it first facing this way along the existing stitching line, and then folded it over and top stitched it in its final position facing this way so the raw edge is enclosed and tidy. Then I can proceed as normal, see previous video. I just have to keep fumbling that bit out of the way as I put together the rest of the corset. There's another version of this basic idea that fills the gap in the center front edges too, the tiny gap between the 2 halves of the busk, because you can see a tiny sliver of chemise through that gap if you're looking closely, and you may find that undesirable. In this case, make the rectangle of 2 layers similarly to how you did before, but really quite narrow and the length of the busk. Sew it into the front left edge, where the nubbin side of the busk will go, as you're sewing the coutil and the outer together, so that when you bag it out, it will protrude just enough as you fasten the busk to fill the gap. So what about overall shape? You can add more height to the top or bottom, or both, of any piece. You can curve it as you please, but obviously you need to take that into account in your bone length plans because that additional height will not hold itself rigid. And also, the farther you get from your initial measurement lines, the less you can rely on the whole thing fitting well, especially if you get into overbust territory. That can go very wrong. But go for it. Try some stuff and see if it works. Easy and reliable alterations include using a longer busk for pointy bits at the top and or bottom of the front, and similar changes to the back. I also sometimes elongate the outer fabric pieces to seamlessly transition into a skirt. The inner bits can stay the same. You could elongate the outer fabric top bits to seamlessly form a waistcoat. In this, my latest experiment, I made the front bit in 2 layers, an inner layer to actually house the busk and bones, and an over layer to mimic the front of a waistcoat with button closure, but without the strain of holding a corset closed. I added some welt pockets to ratchet up the waistcoat vibes, and some braces because, come on. So pattern-wise, this is just 2 versions of the outer layer's front panels, each with its own shaping. The inner one performs the task of front closure and stiffening, and the outer one is fully lined but unboned, constructed and finished as a separate entity, 2 separate entities, and then sewn into the side seams of the base corset's outer layer. I can already think of about a zillion cool variations on this, which I'll try someday soon. The point really is that the possibilities are as endless as your creativity or your willingness to sit in front of Pinterest for a bit. You will undoubtedly think of a load of cool other ways to play with this pattern, and I would love it if you would send me pictures.